Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. St. Charbel would have been hidden had it not been for the Lord's desire to unveil him. He was hidden in the heart of the Lord. His life was hidden with Christ in God, but so close was he to that heart that after his death the Lord glorified him directly. And we have many testimonies, not least this one on the photo, for he appeared after his death, and we know therefore what he looked like. He appeared on the photograph of these pilgrims who came, and there had not been a proper photograph of him during his life, so the Lord gave humanity one after his death. And it is interesting that photographs have a resemblance to icons. The word icon means a similarity, an image, and a saint is an icon of the Lord. And we see in every saint some aspect, some angle of the Lord's personality. In St. Charbel we see the Lord on the mountain. And I would like to zoom into that mountain and that intimacy for a few seconds. St. Charbel was drawn from a very early age to the world of the sacred. He was under the wing of the local priest. He was under the wing of the family, and there were two uncles already hermits. It is not surprising then that he gravitated towards what would have been the center of gravity for a man of that sort. The Maronite rite has its own machinery for forming to sanctity, and what has worked will always work. The mystical, the severe, the vertical, in a word, God, faced without defense, eyeball to eyeball, gaze to gaze, and the Lord then is free to act, and act he did. Charbel was an example of hiddenness, but also of service and humility. He always gave, and he was the last. Grace moved him to ask for permission to be able to become a hermit, and there was this hermitage belonging to the monastery up on the mountain. Interestingly enough, he had the best of both worlds, for in the Eastern Rite they have that verticality which is unchanged and all holy. It draws directly to the Godhead, to which the candidate is exposed by being in a cloud of glory and mystic contact. But also, by the influence of the West, the Maronites had and have that possibility of adoration and daily celebration, which would not be characteristic of the Eastern Orthodox. And so St. Charbel had his consolation on that cold, isolated mountain in the Blessed Sacrament. Indeed, he died celebrating the sacred mysteries. He had to interrupt the celebration, and about an hour later he tried to complete it, but he couldn't. He died of a stroke, but he was at what he was to the end. A great grace, by the way. Now, two things come to mind. One is the fact that the monastic life in the East, and specifically in the mountain of solitude, is pure. We need to look at that. We have many monasteries in the West. What one needs to ask, we all need to ask, is that purity maintained? One, isolation. Well, isolation, if it is invaded all the time by presences, either real or virtual, real in many human beings all around, and virtual in many messages all around and inside, through modern means of communication, right in the hearth and even in the cell itself, then it is an illusion. It is just not there. The desert has become an agora, and there is no difference between the inside and the outside. And there is not much point in leaving the world to find it multiplied 10 over inside. The other is silence specifically. I would like at that point to make a jump. It is to another Lebanese saint, who is not distant from him in time, Marie de Jésus Crucifié, Mary of Jesus Crucified, who died at the age of 32, stigmatized and with all the gifts. Now, what is interesting in the case of this female, nearly contemporary saint, is the fact that the Lord himself was directly in control of her life, to the extent that through her Carmels were built in that holy part of the world. One in particular is of great interest, for the Lord himself deigned to be its architect, that of Bethlehem. He drew up the plans, and interestingly enough, we see what kind of church pleases him. The purity of the lines and the simplicity. In other words, he, in that context of the pure Carmelite life, wanted attention directly focused on him in the tabernacle. But he wanted also order and dignity. There is a splendor in the purity of lines. But also, with regard to the house itself, it was perfectly planned, and he also planned the life therein insofar as he demanded such things, and with insistence, as silence in the cloisters, the corridors. He did not want talking. He did not want the voice to be heard. The human voice, the voice box, was not to be engaged inside in the regular places. Therefore, we see that the Lord is Lord of all the monastic life, and he blesses it when he finds it his, because silence blocks his voice out. Which brings me to the point. A monastery must be a place of stillness. Indeed, on Mount Athos, they are a little concerned when it comes to giving permission to pilgrims to come over to the Holy Mount. They are very demanding, and the reason is this, that they are aware that under the name of pilgrims, tourists can also infiltrate. And that is another dynamic. And it is known that they treasure the gift of silence which they have received from the past centuries on that holy mount. It is not a mount of words, a mount of hearing the word, which precisely can be heard when there are no human words. Now that is something that we need to maintain. because we are eluding ourselves if we create a perfect structure which does everything except what it is there for. And it is there that it may be a place of encounter between the Lord and his disciple. I just conclude. This element then of 1, solitude, and 2, silence, is combined in one perfect thrust, and it is made for precisely encounter. And if that is there, then all the rest, including vocations, will follow. The Lord, when he sees that he is honoured, will major into that centre of favour. He wants souls to be what they're at, and so there is where he will send them. If then we find that a certain house, a certain place, even a certain seminary has not that, then one asks, what is missing? Super omnia bona sua constituere. Crede celas, crede celius, tibi gloria Deo Patri et Filio, cum Sancto Spiritu, in saecula saeculorum. Amen.